In today's lesson, I'm going to go through the basics, how to get started with the common building blocks in React Native. The notes that I'm referring to are linked in the video comments. So for starters, we spent first semester learning about Jetpack Compose with Android Studio, and some words that we used quite a bit were composable functions and parameters. In React Native, a very comparable term would be component, which is just like composable functions that we used in Android Studio, and props. Props are going to be anything that we are going to pass to a component. So similarly to how we had properties or parameters or values that we passed in to our composable, we are going to use props. So the most common building blocks that we're going to talk about are view and text. So a view is essentially a container. If you're familiar with HTML programming, you've probably used div tags, maybe p or span tags, and we use all of those to help break up the screen. Well, we do something very similar in React Native, except we use a view. So you could think of a view as something that you use to arrange or position child elements. You can also use it to give a specific background color behind something, and it just helps you have more control over the elements on the screen. A text is, well, exactly what it sounds like, text. Any text that you want to see on the screen has to be inside of a text component. You can't just have text just chilling in the middle of the code. That doesn't work. There are many props that you can use with your text component. Two that you might use frequently are number of lines or onPress. OnPress gives you the ability to call a function when somebody presses on the text. Now, the next thing that we will talk about are styles. Now, just like, again, within web programming, we use CSS to style things. Style sheets are similar in concept to CSS, but they are not the same thing as CSS. When we build our app, what's going to happen is React Native will map to the native equivalent. So what that means is, iPhones and Android phones and web applications all have a set look. And so when that app is built, if you're viewing it on an iPhone, then you will see the buttons and the menus and everything looking the way that they look on iPhone. If you are running that same app on an Android phone, the buttons and menus and such will look the way they look for Android. So it maps them to the native equivalents, meaning it will use the native button and the native list and whatever else as it displays it or renders it on the screen. Now, there are some properties that are not supported on both platforms. So even though React Native is what we call cross-platform, meaning that you can develop it once and deploy it on multiple devices, that doesn't mean that every single device has a feature that can be used on both. So, there might be something special that only works on iPhone, and so if you use that in your code, you just have to recognize that you won't see it happen on Android. And there is code that you can use to tell it to do something differently if it's not supported, but we'll get there later. So when you're setting up your styles, there are two different ways you can do it. Number one, you can apply styles inline. Now, this is kind of like the equivalent of hard coding something. So yes, you can hard code it to be a certain color and a certain size, but then if you want to repeat that same process a little bit farther on in your app, you have to hard code it all over again. And as you can imagine, that is not very efficient. What is better is to create a style sheet object, and within that object you can create a constant and give it a collection of properties. And then whenever you want to use that collection of properties, you refer to that in the style for the component. So like I said, both ways are useful. I prefer this way up here. However, they're both seen and used. Another reason why I prefer using a style sheet object is because it helps us see errors a little bit quicker. They will show as compile errors on the screen, and it also just really reinforces that idea of code reuse. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at how to put all of this together. So what you see here on the screen is where we want to get on our computer. So we want to open up our folder. So again, browse and open up the whole folder for your app. And then within there, you'll see all of those different files. You'll notice that in the last video, I ran the command to move all that sample code into its own folder, and then I deleted it. So right now I don't see that code anymore. All right, so if I switch over to VS Code, you're going to see this file right here, index.tsx, and that is inside the app folder. Now, for those of you that haven't worked with TypeScript before, TypeScript, oops, didn't mean to move that. Hold on just a second. All right, TypeScript is essentially a more specific version of JavaScript. So JavaScript, as you know, allows you to just declare something as a val or a var, and you don't have to say what data type it is. Well, TypeScript is a more specific version requiring you to give that data type. We'll talk more about the benefits of it down the road. For right now, I just want you to know that it is very similar to JavaScript in a lot of ways, and this file extension .tsx is just telling us that this is a TypeScript file. In older versions of React Native, as in last year, the file that starts the whole app would be in something called app.js. And so you might see some older notes where I refer to the app.js file. However, that is now the index.tsx file. All right, so on this screen, this is our basic starter code. You'll notice up here we have import, and then we have text and view from React Native. And that's because we have our view and our text tag. You'll also notice that similar to how HTML is, the tags open and close with the contents that are inside them. If you click on one tag, its closing tag will highlight, which is nice for trying to figure out if you've closed all of your tags. Now we want to go ahead and we want to add style sheet. So we're going to start typing. And we do have code completion. So like, for example, if I were just to jump to the T, we'll see style sheet and I have it, and it's currently grayed out because I haven't actually used anything with the style sheet yet. Now, one of the extensions that we implemented when we opened up React Native was some of the code snippets to make things a little bit faster for us. And one of them that we're going to use is RNSS. So if I type RNSS and hit enter, that is just going to give me my starting for my style sheet object code. Now inside here, what I can do is I can create some styles. And it's really common for us to have one for the general container, meaning like the whole container of the app. So I'm going to say that I want to call it container. And then I open up curly braces, and then I'm going to give it a few properties. And you'll notice that I have some of these properties right here. And these are actually the properties that I want to use. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it down here. And then I also want to give it a background color. So I'm going to say background color, and I'll just go ahead and, I don't know, make up a hex code. We'll see what that looks like. Okay, so at this point, I want to know how my app's going to look. And if I go to my terminal, I think I still have my code running. I'm going to pause this and check. All right, so we can see over here that I have my code here. I can see my app up on the screen. And if I were to change this text, and I were to say Mrs. Dana mobile apps, we'll notice that right now I don't see anything, but once I do Control S to save, I now see that that text has changed. So that's one of the nice things about this refresh quickly. And if you want to adjust your autosave settings to make it literally change as you're typing, you can. I just find that annoying because then I sometimes see errors on the screen when it's trying to compile the code before I'm done typing. Now you might be wondering why in the world I don't see this background color. Well, I haven't yet used my style, and I can see that because it's grayed out. So if I want to go ahead and actually apply that style, I'm going to first delete this because I don't want, I'm not going to use my inline style anymore. And so this is how it would look if I have no style. And again, if I save it, I now see it moves up to the top left of the screen. And so now if I want to apply the style that I have in my style sheet, I can say style equals, and then I open up the curly braces, and then now I have to tell it to get this styles object, so styles dot, and then container. And if I save it again, I now see that this, ooh, that's a very blue color, has appeared, and I can play around with some colors and change that right there. Now, let's say I wanted to make another style for my text, okay? Whenever I want to separate these different values, I have to put a comma after them. So you'll notice that we have a comma after each of these, and I have a comma after my curly brace. So let's just say I wrote, I'm going to call it text, and let's say I wanted to adjust my font size. So I could say font size, and let's say I did 28. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to apply this style so that I can see it as I'm typing. So I can see there's my new font size, and let's say I wanted to change the color, and we'll just go, oh, I don't know, like a gray color, okay? And then maybe I wanted to make it bold, so no more caps. Font weight, and we'll say bold. And now I can see that that is more bold. So this is just a very brief introduction to styling. There are so many different things that you can do, and we will talk more about this in class. But I just wanted to give you a little intro. So if we go back to the note stock, you'll see here that I have, these are the old files. Actually, I have to update that, so I'll do that in just a minute. But I want you to see this right here. So there are more things that we can do with styles. Lots of really cool things. This is where ChatGPT will be your best friend. And then that's interesting. I'm going to have to see what that was supposed to be. Anyhow, this style sheet reference that I made gives you some suggestions, because I found a lot of students got frustrated with the syntax, where they needed quotes, where they didn't need quotes, where they needed commas, curly braces, and so on. And so I have a couple different examples here. And then the other thing that I wanted to show you about is that you can extend styles. So React Native styles don't allow you to inherit like you can in other languages, but what you can do is you can create another style sheet object and then use this spread operator to take all of those styles and then build off of them. Okay, so really similarly to how we've thought about inheritance in Java or other languages that supported inheritance. And so there's some examples of that down here. All right, time to have some fun with your styles.